I'm Duncan McLeod, and this is TechCentral's Meet the CIO, the technology show where we talk to the people who lead technology in business. Meet the CIO is proudly brought to you by Wipro. We thank Wipro for helping bring you these great interviews, and you can learn more about Wipro at wipro.com. My guest on Meet the CIO today is the Chief Information and Technology Officer at Schalk. Schalk Visser has worked in the telecommunications sector for more than 25 years, and his career has spanned the likes of Telkom and Vodacom, where he's worked as engineer and later in executive level positions. He joined Schalk in 2012 as an executive in the Program Management Office, where he led several major projects, including the renewal of Schalk's radio access network. He was appointed as Schalk's CITO in July of 2020. Schalk has not one, not two, but three master's degrees, one in business administration, one in the philosophy of corporate strategy, and another in electrical and electronics engineering. Schalk Visser, it's good to see you. Welcome to Meet the CIO, and thank you for making the time.
Nice to meet you, Duncan. Thanks. Quite an intro.
Schalk, you work in the telecommunications industry. This show is not just about telecoms or IT, it's about industries across the board, but you're our first guest in the telecommunications space. Cool. So welcome. You've built your career in telecoms. We were chatting just before the camera started rolling. You, in fact, started your career at Telkom on the back of a bursary.
Yeah.
Tell us about that and how your career progressed from there.
Yeah. No, I was actually quite fortunate. I actually said to someone the other day, we always have this story, or I always have this story I tell my boys. It's like I always wanted to be a farmer. Mm-hmm. My granddad was a farmer there in the Western Cape. And my dad said to me, listen, you can't be a farmer if you can't do anything with your hands. So I ended up at the technical high school in Worcester, which I will always be grateful for. Mm-hmm. But that opened up the road for technology and electrical engineering, which I actually completed there from a high school perspective, and then ended up at Stellenbosch University.
Okay.
So after the first year at Stellenbosch University, I was lucky and fortunate to get a Telkom bursary, and the rest is history.
Okay. So you grew up in a farming background, yeah?
Small town.
Okay.
Small town, Caledon, Western Cape.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So small town, ended up in boarding school at Worcester, Drosdale Technical High School. Mm-hmm. Finished there, and then, as I said, ended up at Stellenbosch University. Mm-hmm. Did my BSc, Bachelor's in Engineering, and then eventually my Master's in Engineering at Stellenbosch.
Okay. I know you weren't at Telkom for terribly long, but what projects were you involved in while you were at Telkom?
At Telkom, we were mainly responsible for testing new equipment. So all the new microwave equipment at the time, there was a lot of advancements in terms of modulation schemes and how the traffic was compacted over the microwave systems. So we were responsible for testing those systems in the labs and then rolling it out into Telkom. So we were part of the Telkom infrastructure team.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite
Did that mean you got to travel a lot around the country? And
not really around the country, but I did see big parts of Gauteng and Northwest and so on.
Okay. Not the best parts of the
country. Yeah, but it was actually quite cool. I remember the Telkom guys at the time, they were there when I joined, they were there for 15 years already. Mm-hmm. And these guys were really eager to learn, to show you and teach you. So they took you to all these high sites, these, what do they call them? Concrete microwave towers. Mm-hmm. They took you to all of these things, and it was really the attitude of those individuals to try and teach you. It was really something that stuck with me. How they pushed you to learn, and they exposed you to all these things. Something that you don't see these often.
Was that a Telkom culture thing, or
I don't know if it
was just those people?
I guess it was those people and the people you got exposed to, but it's definitely something that stuck with me and even when I joined Vodacom in the early days, it's like I was a project leader at the time, and the guys in maintenance, how they took you out to sites, they really were eager to teach you, this is how a site works. Because if you sit in a boardroom and you try and manage projects and you frustrate them by not knowing what's going on, it's really... So they were really eager to push you. So it's almost like a generation of tech that was embedded in those organizations that were pushing to get you to learn and experience and stuff, which I always remember, and it was quite cool.
So did you discover then quite quickly that you had a passion for telecommunications?
I think at Telkom, not yet, but definitely when I joined Vodacom. Yeah.
Okay.
That was...
When did that happen?
That was 6 plus 2006, 7.
Okay, about almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
Okay, and Alan Knott-Craig was CEO of Vodacom at the time.
Alan Knott-Craig was the CEO at the time, yes.
Okay, and take us briefly through your career at Vodacom and what you were doing when you started there, why you left Telkom to join Vodacom, and what you did during your time there. You were there for quite a while.
Yeah, Vodacom was about 6 years. I did 6 years there. So I left Telkom after about a year and a half. So I had the bursary that I had to work back. At the time, I met quite a few friends at Telkom because of their bursary programs that they ran. They had young guys starting at Telkom, all coming from UP, UJ, all finishing their engineering, and now they need to start work. And everybody's eager to learn and experience. So some of them already then moved to Vodacom, kept contact with these guys, and then eventually at a braai, people like say, listen, it's really fun. You want to join? I was getting bored at Telkom because it was very much doing a little bit of very specific. And at that age, you're very eager to learn and expose and grow. So I jumped to Vodacom at the time. Spent the 6 years there, all in project management, but mainly on the radio side, later in the core side. Then in 2012, I joined Cell C.
Okay.
After, I think it was almost a 8-month stint in Mozambique for Vodacom.
Okay, that must have been interesting.
Yes, that was quite interesting, and I think that's the first time I really got exposure to a lot more. Where in Vodacom, so if I can put it to you like this, it was like at Telkom is very specific, very specialized. Then at Vodacom, it was still very focused around the radio side and so on, but a little bit broader. And then when I ended up in Vodacom Mozambique, it was everything. And that's where I first got that exposure to the whole, let's say, end-to-end technology stack, from the radio side through to the network, through to the IT systems and everything. So that was quite cool.
You must have gotten to see quite a bit of Mozambique as well in that role.
Yeah, I think I ended up one weekend in Pemba just before we came back to South Africa. My fiance at the time, my wife now, we said, listen, we have to do something nice. So we flew up to Pemba. We treated ourselves for a weekend there. But yeah, the rest was more on the southern side of Mozambique, Maputo and so on.
So Alan Knott-Craig was your CEO at Vodacom when you joined, and when you joined Cell C, your CEO was Alan Knott-Craig as well.
Yes, he just started.
You're following him around, are you?
I won't say I follow him around, but it was quite coincidental that at the time he was also the
So it was
CEO.
pure coincidence. There was no...
Yeah, I think, looking back, it was pure coincidence. I think for me, when I joined Cell C, I think I mentioned to you earlier, I met this gentleman in Mozambique. He was head of the engineering side of it, Joe Brits. Joe then joined Cell C with Alan. Well, Alan phoned him up and said, listen, I need a CTO. Joe said, I'm keen. So Joe went from Vodacom Mozambique to Cell C. He then spoke to me and said, listen, it's a nice opportunity. Come, we really worked well together in Mozambique. So I said, okay, cool. Let's do this. And that was July 2012.
Okay. And it was once again a project management role you took on?
Yes, that was a project management role. To set up that project management function within Cell C.
Yeah.
At the time, Cell C was very much expat driven. There was a whole bunch of expat individuals within the organization.
The Lebanese were very much involved at that stage.
There were a lot of expat people in the company running finance projects. All the rollout was outsourced. So it was not a managed services, but like an outsourced rollout where how the network was built was purely on if a site was up, the contractors got paid. So it was not managed very well. So all of that structure was then introduced in terms of putting in place project offers, projects and everything to make sure that there's full end-to-end sight of what's going on.
Okay. Yeah. And you became CITO in mid-2020 during the height of the COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
Just take us through what led to your appointment to that position. And
I think we went through quite a rough time at that time with, I think it was the second recap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was around about the second recap. It was COVID. We had 197 processes at the time. So it was quite a a tough time for Cell C. I think at the time the CEO that got appointed was Douglas Craigie Stevenson. We had chats about where the company is going, where our technology strategy is going. If you look at that point in time, we were still trying to follow the old model of build and not necessarily what we've gone down to now in terms of changing the business model. So we were chasing something that we were never really able to catch, if I can call it that. So in conversations with him, and I said to him, I really think we've got a plan that can work if we change the model of how we build the network. And with that and those conversations, then the CITO role came into play. Okay.
And you, I presume, were intimately involved in that project and managing it. I mean, it sounded to this outsider anyway like it was an incredibly complex thing that you did. Maybe just take us through what was involved in the project and some of the learnings that came out of it.
Yeah, I think the learnings that we got out of it is, and if you think about it, you've got, at the time we had 5,500 sites. I still remember that, 5503. That's the number of sites we had, of which I think 2,400 of them were LTE capable. So you can imagine those 2,400 sites compares to, well, those were the 2,400 sites were mainly focused in the metro areas, your Pretoria, Joburg, Cape Town, and so on. That compares to 7,500 sites that Vodacom has got, or MTN, or Telkom in those same areas. So from a scale perspective, we were just never able to compete. So the process of getting to where we are today was to basically go and enable a virtualized radio access network. At the time, MTN was quite keen to partner with Cell C in terms of putting that model into play. So we started with MTN. They activated a virtualized radio access network for us nationally. In parallel to that, we had to go to all 5,503 sites, take them down, deconstruct them, make sure that landlords and all the leases and everything is up to date, signed off.
It wasn't a case of just switching it off remotely. You had to go to each site.
Each and every site. Dismantling each and every site. Yeah. And okay, a lot of them were co-located with the likes of a Vodacom or a MTN or ATC and so on. But you still had, I think of the 5508, we still had our own sites with around 2,000 sites. So that had physically to be deconstructed. We actually went out on a big sale of assets process in parallel to this. So we worked with the likes of Helios and so on, where they looked at these sites and took up certain portfolios of those, brought in cash, so they took it over with the co-locating parties on them.
Oh, so some of the stuff was left in place?
No, not the radio stuff. No, we still took it off, but the physical mast, because there might have been a Vodacom or an MTN on that site, there were future value in those sites. So Helios, as an example, were interested in buying that site from us, and then we just removed our radio equipment. But the physical site is still there, and they then took over the running of that site and everything, and they then run it as a towerco.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was, I think the biggest challenge in that entire process was the logistics around deconstructing and taking out all of that. We had to sell all the old equipment, scrapping it. It was quite a long process, but we
took years, did it?
Yeah, we started the process. I think the phase 1 MTN roaming agreement we completed November 2019. Phase 2 is when we basically went national and we switched off our own. So that was around 21, 22, I think. Yeah, more or less. Okay.
And you've also got some sort of arrangement. Now, it's never been clear in my mind exactly how it all works, so maybe you can clear it up for me. But you've also got some sort of expanded roaming agreement with Vodacom. How do you decide when traffic goes on Vodacom's network, when it goes on MTN's network? Is it purely a cost-based decision? How does it work?
Yeah. So the two, what we're trying to do is, okay, so maybe I must take a step back.
Sure.
So you've got let's label the MTN roaming agreement the current MOCN agreement, where we have got our virtualized radio access network.
MOCN being?
Multi-operator core network.
Okay.
So that's where, it's not your traditional roaming. So traditional roaming is what you would experience if you travel to the UK. and your phone book onto a UK network. You're roaming there. It shows you that, say, Vodafone UK as an example. That's called traditional roaming. It's not a very seamless experience because what that requires, the device needs to lose the home network before it can book onto the visiting network, which is the roaming network. That's what we had in play on the Vodacom side. So what happens is the customer loses the Cell C network, then it goes onto the Vodacom network in a traditional roaming format, and then it gets stuck there. Even if there's one bar of signal, that device, mobile device, will not leave that network. So you can imagine how bad the customer experience will be is if you're sitting right next to a Cell C site, but there's one bar of Vodacom and the customer's on that Vodacom bar and he can't get you other than forcing his phone to the home network, which we then taught customers and explained to customers, and that helped, but it's not a very seamless experience, not a great experience. So what we did with the Vodacom or the MTN is we activated the virtualized radio access network, and what we've done now is we've done the same on the Vodacom side. So the traditional roaming arrangement with Vodacom, we're going to phase out, and we're going to have two virtualized radio access networks, one on MTN and one on Vodacom, overlapping. And how we then manage traffic between these two is to see where the experience for the customer is the best. So in certain areas you will know. You go into the bush, you've got great MTN service, but no Vodacom. Or you go to East Coast, great Vodacom experience, but no MTN. So it's just the nature of mobile networks. So what we will be able to do is to give customers that. We must just, on our side, be very careful how we manage that, because you can imagine yourself, it's like 28,000 sites, more or less, between the two. And we've got our core network, and we can't have customers move between these 28,000 sites. Talking to our core is going to fall over. So we'll put in place certain rules, look at general experience over time, what should be suitable for that customer from an experience perspective, and then we'll manage the traffic.
Do you have to build all of this in software, or is it stuff you can just press buttons in the back end and it works?
It's stuff that the teams have been wrapping their heads around for the last, I would say, 6 months in terms of how to get that to work. It's not something that's been done anywhere. So it's like trial and error at the moment. So
is this pioneering here in South Africa, this stuff?
As far as we know, there's no other operator that does what we are doing in terms of having these two virtualized radio access. Well, there's definitely no other operator in Africa or South Africa or the world that we're aware of that switched off its entire radio access network. That we're pretty confident of. The second thing is there's no one that's doing what we're doing in terms of having these two virtualized radio access networks to then manage traffic in between and provide customers the best experience depending on where they are.
These companies are also competitors, though. I mean, is there worry that they might try and do stuff that affects your network performance, for example?
Yeah. So we've got independent not benchmarks, but you will be aware of OpenSignal.
Yes.
OpenSignal uses, they track everybody's experience across all networks. So we very much leverage off those kind of insights.
Okay.
And that actually came through now. I think the last update came through in February, where we were number one in video experience, number one in upload data. And so it's
so big improvements.
Big improvements, massive improvements that we are seeing. And it's keeping us honest in terms of making sure that because what's very nice about that kind of insight from OpenSignal is it shows you where you're good, but it also shows you where you need to go and improve. So we actually now have those kind of tools and insights to say, okay, but why are we number 3 in this area? What do we need to fix on the core to improve that element for the customer? So that's quite a nice thing. And then the second thing that we use to measure experience across these virtualized radio access networks is our own customer experience management function. So we actually see if a customer's got an issue in a certain spot, we can then link that back to the MTN site or the Vodacom site, and we then work with these partners of ours to see how do we address those problems. So we're not blind. We've got full insight into our customer's experience and then the benchmark between them.
But if you're effectively you are using the two biggest networks in the country to provide your services, if you play that right and build the right back-end systems, I imagine you'd be able to play those networks off against each other to effectively have the best network in the country.
In theory,
or is it more complicated than that?
In theory, I almost want to say, in theory, anything is possible. Practically, it's complex, and it will take a lot of time.
Okay.
But I think the ingredients are there, and the willingness of the teams and how they engage. It's quite. If I look at how the teams engage with these challenges, it's like things that they haven't experienced before. They've got 15, 20 years of experience in other telcos. Then they come here and then now I need to figure this out. So it's quite a challenge for the guys, but in theory, yes, and that's what we're aiming for. That's like if people use this North Star thing. That's what we're aiming for. If we can get that right, then we gold.
I know your CEO, George Mendes, has said that 5G is also coming on the Cell C's platform soon. I think it's a matter of weeks now, if I'm not mistaken. Is there a lot of work involved in that as well?
A lot of work from a testing perspective, because we're still a mobile network operator with our own ECNS licenses. We still need to make sure that all the devices work and test, because it all still comes back to our own core network. So a lot of I would say, if you look at VoLTE and 5G, the biggest testing challenges came through on the VoLTE side. That's
voice over LTE.
Yeah, voice over LTE. So for those, we've closed most of it, if not all. 5G is a little bit less complex, but the OEMs are very sticky around giving that software upgrades or making those software upgrades available to your device for your network if you don't comply with those tests. So testing, all good. The Vodacom network that's now live has got 5G activated. I think we've got 2,500 sites, more or less, of 5G sites active on that virtualized radio access network. MTN, we're in the process of activating now. We should be getting the first ones this month. We're really pushing hard for that. And that will then be another 3,500 5G sites. So in total, we should be sitting between 5,500, 6,000 sites. Yeah.
Okay, so switch on when in the next matter of months?
Months, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the Vodacom one is live. It's just the traffic, the way we're going to manage the traffic will be dependent on the device.
So you can already get a 5G signal if you're on the Cell C network?
If you're on the Cell C network and we have you on the Vodacom network, you will have a 5G signal.
Okay.
We've just not put anybody there yet. We're busy putting, because we only completed the activation of the Vodacom virtualized network 2-3 weeks ago. Oh, no, I'm lying. A month ago. And now we're testing how we migrate traffic between these networks, because that device and the SIM that's in that device behaves different for each device. it's a, yeah. So you have to test. So the guys have really been wrapping their heads around how we manage the traffic, and managing the traffic sounds wrong, but it's how do you make sure that the customer's got the best experience? Because if he ends up on the one and the device suddenly thinks he needs to be on the other one, then he loses the signal. Or he loses network. So the customer experience will be really bad. So all those scenarios the teams have been working on and bridging and closing out and ticking off. So we've moved the first 30-odd friendly technical guys over to the Vodacom side last week. We're doing another 150 this week. And then we're starting to ramping up the migration of subscribers to that.
Okay. Now, you're more than just the CTO of a mobile network. You're also the CIO of Cell C, in effect. What is the role of technology in supporting what is, in effect, a technology business? Is it different to other industries, do you think?
I don't think it's so much different. And I said to someone the other day, what I've realized is that, and I think it's the same for businesses across industries. It's not just for technology, for the technology industry. The people within organizations are becoming a lot more tech savvy, if I can call it that.
Sure.
They have a much better understanding of what's happening.
Younger generations coming in.
Younger generation. This thing of technology sitting on the side and support the business is long gone. It's a much deeper integrated relationship and partnership within the organization that's required to make it successful now. You can go onto ChatGPT or Grok for that matter and ask it anything about any technology question you might have. And it's probably going to give you a much more clear, succinct answer that you will understand than any of the guys in the IT team. Because just the way, and the people are learning like that. So what you find now is people will come to you with a question which they already have a pretty good idea of what it can be and could be. And what empowers or what really makes it work is when the IT and the tech teams actually work with the business and work in partnership with the business. And then you see it. So that shift has definitely happened in the last 12, 24 months.
And is that unique to telecommunications, or do you think that's happening across all industry?
I think it's happening across. I think it's happening across. I think if it's not happening across, I'll be surprised. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So since you became CITO in 2020, what changes have you made to Cell C's information systems? And how are those changes helping support the business?
I think in the last couple of years, the focus has mainly been around two areas. Well, I don't want to downplay all the other stuff, sure. But the big focus areas were two. I think the first being our cybersecurity and what we've put in place there. This is something that is we've seen it ourselves, and we've seen it in the industry, and we've seen it globally. It's something that's really, you have to keep your finger on that, and you can't just let it be. So there's a lot of effort and work that's gone into putting in place processes and systems to monitor and protect ourselves. The second thing that's taken up quite a big part of the team's capacity has been that we've moved from our old billing system to a complete new billing system over a period of 18 months. We completed that migration.
That is never a minor thing in a telco.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. I'm
surprised you aren't grayer.
No, I must say, it's like the teams that's working on these things, and that's for me, it's like we've got, to be honest with you, we've got a technology group. Now, technology group is IT, network engineering, the SOC, technology enablement, of 210 people. And those 210 people, of which a big portion of them focused on this billing migration. I must say, if you don't have the right people, you will really be stuffed. and what I've learned over the last 12, 13 years I've been at Cell C is the people in Cell C makes a massive difference. They are so resilient.
They've had to be, right, over the years.
They just keep on going. Yeah. They keep on going, and it's really, I won't stand back for any other operator with our team. Not at all.
So billing system up and running now?
Up and running, all good. Went live August last year. We're now busy with concluding on the phase 2 of that. That was just looking at the prepaid side of the business. The phase 2 of it is looking at the postpaid side of the business and the enterprise side of the business. So we're in the final stages of concluding an RFP for that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, we obviously can't, you mentioned it, but we can't ignore the security side of things. Cell C was, of course, recently the victim of a ransomware attack, and it certainly hasn't been the only company in South Africa that's been a victim of this. It seems to be a real scourge at the moment. In fact, I think MTN was a victim of some sort of cyber attack the other day. They haven't specifically said whether or not it was a ransomware attack. But take us through what happened exactly and the measures that Cell C has taken to mitigate against the potential fallout from this particular incident, and also what it's doing to prevent this type of thing from happening in future.
I think you touch on something there, Duncan, and that's it's happening more and more and more and more. So yes, we've gone back and we looked at what went wrong and what did we need to do to address and fix and so on, and that was done within hours. I just want to say, to address and make sure that doesn't happen again. But what our focus has been in the last couple of months is actually on the education side of it. Because what we realized is, to your point, it's happening almost on a daily, weekly basis, and it's simple things. It's like my mother, if she clicks on a link at home, she won't know. But it's like she's not aware, she's not been exposed to that. So how do you drive customer education to make sure that they don't do that or do this? Because, to be honest, our data is out there. Your email address is out. Your ID number is out. Depending on, there's been so many breaches over the last couple of years. The information is out there. It's how do you protect yourself? How do you make sure that you don't click on that link, or you don't answer to that email, or you don't do that? And I think that's where our shift and focus is becoming more and more prevalent, is how do we educate customers? What do we put in place to make sure that they are aware? How do we do that constantly? Not just now because of what happened in January, but how do we constantly communicate and inform and keep customers aware? Otherwise, you just become another victim.
And I mean, just briefly, what exactly happened here? And was it an employee clicking on a link they shouldn't have clicked on? How did these attackers get in?
It was compromised credentials that was used. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and they got into your system and encrypted data and demanded a ransom?
No. So they were able to extract 1.6 terabytes of data. But it was unstructured data.
Okay.
So it's like PPTs, that's a presentation or PDF document here and so on. So it did contain some confidential information, our contracts and so on. But we've worked with our partners with the directly affected customers and so on, informed them, made them aware of it. They were obviously trying to encrypt, but the systems or processes that we put in place, the controls we put in place prior to it happening, stopped them from doing that.
Okay.
But typically they send an email saying, speak to us, and then you either choose or you don't. Mm-hmm. And then the guidance that we got from our external partners and external advisors was not to engage, but to address this. And
have they gone away now?
Yeah, They haven't come back. Yeah.
Okay.
So what we've learned is it's like they come in, they say, we've got your data, and then you can go and try and figure out where they came in, what they touched, and so on. And then, say 3 months later, they typically, if you don't engage with them, they release it on the dark web.
How do they engage? Email.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's very, I don't know. Email.
What advice? I mean, you obviously learned a lot going through this unfortunate incident, but given that so many South African organizations are being targeted in this way, what would you say are the top things that you would let other CIOs know or CISOs know about what you've learned through this process? What should companies be doing to protect themselves?
I think you can, what we've seen and learned, and you see it in the industry, that's not just telco, but across the industry, what has happened in the last couple of years. You can spend billions of rands to try and secure your infrastructure and your networks and stuff. The weakest point remains the individual between this finger and that device, clicking that link or taking data outside the organization. So the thing I think that you gain the most from is making sure everybody is aware, and that's not a one-day thing or a once-off thing. It's to make sure people are aware, that they're conscious about it. It's like brushing your teeth in the morning. It's just, you don't just click a link. You check for something. It's like if it's happened to you, you will see an email address from Discovery, but it says abcdysg.com, and it's a Discovery, and it's like, but not a lot of people are really attuned to that.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you make sure? Because that's the weakest link. The human remains the weakest link. So
and the attackers know this.
They know this, so they will target. You can spend billions of rands, and you can still
suffer a breach.
You can still suffer a breach. And then it's, how do you control that blast radius? How does it contain, if they access that system, does it contain there, or do they jump across?
I suppose you need an emergency plan to deal with these situations. So, if someone encrypts your data and demands a ransom, okay, what's our rule book say? This is what we do.
Yeah.
And just follow the procedure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we were on the call as an exco I was on the beach, actually.
Oh, shame.
Sitting on a call. Some other colleagues was also on the beach sitting. But the process works, which is great. So at least you saw the process work, and we got together, made a call, said, this is what we need to do. You go do that, and then we report back. Tomorrow we meet again, or tonight we meet again. So the processes and the governance and things that was put in place prior to this really helped us through it. And what I think we've learned through this process is there's always room for improvement. You can do this better, you can do that better, and we'll loop back into that and make sure that we're better prepared next time.
Great. Just lastly then, Schalk, you're a technologist at heart. What's got you excited from a technology perspective in the telecom space right now? What's coming down the line that we should all be excited about, actually? 6G, is that anywhere near fruition?
I think it's another few years away.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do from our side is to, and we're not ones to go and build major networks. We partner with key partners. So we're looking at all these guys, the Wi-Fi providers, the telco infrastructure providers, the satellite providers. We're looking at all these guys to make sure that how do we position ourselves best to make sure that once 6G becomes a reality and all these mediums of connectivity needs to converge, that we are best placed to be able to provide that to our customers. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is, and it's almost like, you don't want to say because it's been said so many times, but the power of AI and how that's helping, you will see it in your own life, in what you do on a daily basis.
I use it all day. Yeah,
it's amazing. And it's like, the challenge at the moment is to bridge that, your experience, but you've now realized how good it is. I've realized how good it is, but how do you improve, how do you increase the scope of that so more people, if I just look at, we've started rolling out of Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Oh yes.
And the way people use it and to what extent, it's clear that people don't yet understand the full power that it provides to them. So it's like, how do you educate employees, and also then how do you leverage that to make just the business more effective?
Yes.
What we're also looking at is how we look at leveraging those kind of technologies into our customer experience. So for instance, our call centers. At the moment, there's a lot of manual intervention in terms of taking a call, where if you rather go the route of deploying generative AI, a lot of the stuff the customer can do on his own. He can have a voice conversation, have it transcribed, have it answered, and play it back to him. So there's a lot of these capabilities that just brings more and more efficiencies into the business, and those, I think that's really going to make a nice difference going forward.
There's quite a lot of interest around low Earth orbit satellites and the potential there as well, with things like Starlink, Project Kuiper from Amazon and others. What's your view of the role that these LEO satellites are going to play in the telecommunications space in South Africa specifically in the coming years?
I think it's going to play a complementary role. We're not against them coming in and providing. For us, it's about what is the best solution, let's call it technical solution, for a customer-specific need. So if a customer-specific need is have a lack of broadband connection in the bush, then surely that's a tool that you can bring to that problem. If a customer's requirement is to have a big broadband service within the city, then there's a different tool that you can provide that customer. So I believe there's a space for all of these, and we are engaging with all of them. We're not just stuck on Wi-Fi, mobile, FTTH, FTTB, satellite. We're looking at all of them so that we can have that in our bouquet of services that we can offer our customers.
Okay, so if someone in a rural farm setting or something needs a connection, you might offer them through a partnership you might have with one of the LEO providers, you might offer that solution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately,
so you'll compete with them and you'll partner with them.
Yeah. No. We'll partner for me is probably the more sustainable way forward. I think what it comes down to, we've in our company strategy, and you would have written about it, and we would have talked about it a lot in the past, is one of the key pillars is network perception and network quality. And a lot of the focus in the last 12, 18 months, 2 years, has been around how do you change perception and how do you address the mobile connectivity problem. So that we believe we've made a huge progress there in terms of what we're seeing from OpenSignal, the My Broadband results and everything. But where that's shifting now is to say, not just mobile connectivity, any connectivity. It's what are those bouquet of services that we're going to offer our customers to provide them a seamless connectivity experience for whatever they want to use it for.
Schalk, we could talk about technology all day, especially telecoms networks, fascinating subject. Schalk Visser is Chief Information and Technology Officer at Cell C. Thank you so much for your time today and for speaking to TechCentral's Meet the CIO. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Duncan.
Thanks, Schalk.
Cool.